we hear so much that like when you find the one, it's just easy and you just know and it's just effortless. And it's like, no, it's not fucking effortless. It's not. Like you have to show up, you have to like commit to each other and you have to grow. You have to be committed to growing together. And so I think that it's a choice and it's really easy to just run away from it. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the show. Lily and I have just been go, go, go lately, like traveling nonstop. You guys know Lily just went to Alaska. I just went to EDC. I'm literally leaving for Florida today as we are recording this to go to a dance festival. And Lily, you're on the East Coast right now, right? Visiting your parents?
Yeah, I'm on the East Coast visiting my parents, and then this weekend I'm going to Canada.
So much travel. We were both talking about that off camera like last week. Just we were like, I feel like we travel a lot. But anyways, I feel like I've literally just been nonstop and I have been relying so much on Paleo Valley meat sticks. It's a problem. I don't know. You guys, do you like the meat sticks, right?
I love the meat sticks. I was just telling Jess, like, how funny, like, two words, meat sticks are to me but then we were talking about it and we were like, yeah, but it's not just one type of meat, it's beef and chicken. And they also have pork. I haven't gone there yet with the
Me
pork
neither.
sticks.
Yeah, I'm not a huge pork person in general, but they just came out with the chicken meat sticks and they're pretty good actually. So they have been saving me. Protein is like my number one thing. If I don't get enough protein, like my blood sugar is just so off. And anyways, I've been like living off of them and it's just been life saving. So if you guys don't already know about Paleo Valley, they're amazing. They're super high quality, like supplements, bars, meat sticks. Oh, electrolytes too.
Yeah, so that's what I've been using a lot of, the electrolytes, with like being on the plane. Excuse me. But also just like in my daily life, like in the morning, usually I'm like, yes, I need some electrolytes. And I really like the Paleo Valley electrolytes even more than Element. And I know that's like a big like rivalry going on. But for me, I'm not like a super salty. Like I like the salty taste, but I feel like Element is like a little like intense for me sometimes. It just takes forever to like finish a packet. So I really love Paleo Valley's electrolytes because of that reason. But I just ordered a Paleo Valley order to my parents' house while I'm here in Pennsylvania. And I got some new products, which I'm really excited about. So I'm trying their fish roe. Have you tried that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like fish. It kind of like makes me feel weird, honestly, but it's fish eggs in like a
Uh-huh.
capsule. But essentially,
Mm.
what I've been really drawn to fish oil recently, like really drawn to it. And then I went to my naturopath and I just brought like a $5 fish oil that I got from my co-op that I live really close to in Idaho. And I was like, I just feel intuitively like I need some fish oil. And so
Mm.
she, basically like body response tested it on me and she was like, whoa, your body wants like 4 fish oils a day. And if you've seen like a fish oil, it's like this big. So
Wow.
it kind of makes sense for me too, because when you think about it from like an omega-3 perspective, it's not like I'm eating fish every day. And I've just kind of felt like intuitively that omega-3s are kind of missing from my diet in like a really consistent way. And we need a lot of them. So anyway,
Mm.
I've been on the fish oil thing. And then I saw on Paleo Valley when I was ordering that they have a fish roe supplement. And I was just doing a little bit of research and it was just saying how fish roe is basically the same as fish oil, just a little bit higher quality. So I'm gonna give it a shot. And like I can't really speak to it now because I haven't tried it, but based on their other products, I'm sure it's gonna be great. So that's what I've been really loving from Paleo Valley.
Ooh, yeah, you're gonna have to let us know because um their sourcing is so high quality and it's like the same with their beef sticks and their chicken sticks and everything. They use all grass-fed, grass-finished beef and it's just super high quality sourcing. So Anyways, we just kind of went into our little health. Lily and I are super health conscious and we don't talk about it enough. So
Yeah.
just giving you guys a little insight there, but definitely check out Paleo Valley if you haven't heard of them yet. And it's literally, yeah, what's fueling us. So we also we want to touch on a few housekeeping notes really quickly. So Lily has something really exciting in the works that has been a major project for months now. So we just wanted to bring it to the pod. Lily, do you want to give the listeners some insight?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, it's been definitely a big thing on my horizon right now, and I'm building my website with a website designer, and she is so fun to work with. She is kind of like this digital fairy woman who is just she's so ethereal, she's so sweet, but also really great to work with in terms of just like professionalism, like all those things. Like it really is just such a dream collaboration. And yeah, I've been building my website. I do all the copy, and then she's been designing a lot of the pages and that kind of thing. So just if you're following me on Instagram, I'll be updating you more on that, and also on the podcast too. It's not complete yet, but it's just something that I really felt was important for the foundation of my business, and it's actually going to be a whole new business like when the website launches. So I just kind of wanted to put a pin in that. It's coming. So really excited about that and just can't wait to share it. And on that note, Jess has been, as you probably, if you're listening to the podcast, you should be on Jess's email list for her astrology business requirement. Okay. So,
It's
Jess,
mandatory.
yeah, it's mandatory. So Jess, tell us a little bit. I mean, I personally have been loving your emails. Read one yesterday, loved it. But tell us a little bit more about your email list.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Lil. Yeah, okay. So if you guys didn't know, I started an email list a few months back around all things 13 sign astrology. And it has been so much fun for me. I've just been like really taking my subscribers through the zodiac seasons along with according to 13 sign. And that is something that it feels so embodied of 13 sign astrology. And I've just been having so much fun with it. I just sent out an email. I've been sending out multiple emails actually around Taurus season because right now, at the time of this recording, we're still in Taurus season in the 13 sign system. I think we're in Gemini season in Western though. But yeah, so I've just been noticing all of these things in my life coming up that correlate to Taurus season. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to write about this. I'm going to send it out to my email list. And I really like to offer you guys like insight into how you can look into your chart and like see how Taurus season or whatever zodiac season we're in is benefiting or impacting your chart, and just like really empowering you guys in that way. So we'll put the link to join that in the show notes, and you can, when you join, I have a freebie so you can see if your sun sign changed according to the system, because a lot of people's sun signs change in 13 sign from mainstream Western. Both Lily's and I's did. So yeah, I would love for you guys to join me there. It's been really, really fun. So
Yeah, it really has. And I've just been loving your emails. I feel like it's such an incredible mode of communication for you. And, and also, I ordered that book, the cookbook that we cooked
you
with
did?
when I
Oh
was
my
there.
God.
And I read on your email, you were like, I influenced my mom and my bestie. And I'm like, okay, like I need to get it. Like I said I was going to get it, and then I totally forgot about it. So I was like, okay, now. So you influenced
You're gonna
me, your bestie, and your mom to get that cookbook. And I can't wait.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Just because I know you, and we cooked a recipe together out of it. Yeah, the cookbook she's talking about is not my cookbook. I've been telling everyone about it, and I'm like, I'm definitely not incentivized or anything. It's just like really something I've been loving, which I find hilarious. But it's seriously so good by Carissa Stanton, and she's the influencer Brock Your Body. This cookbook has been changing my life, y'all. It's just like adding so much quality. So highly recommend. But yeah, thank you, Lily. And I'm so glad you're on it because it's just fun when my friends are on my email list and can see all of that. So
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And we also, and it was interesting because actually in the last email I sent, I was talking about Taurus season. An aspect of Taurus season is commitment. And it just tied in so beautifully to our episode with Christina Rice. So 2 episodes ago now, when at the time when this is going to be released, we had Christina on the podcast. She's an intuitive channel and energy healer. And we talked about her new book, The Codes of Divine Love. And we talked about relationships and higher consciousness relationships, and it was juicy. It was definitely something that both Lily and I were like, holy shit, we need to listen to this back and just kind of like take it all in. And so we thought it would be really fun today to just talk about relationships from just both Lily and I's perspective and our experiences, and kind of also giving our insights into what we got from her book and from that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you haven't listened to that episode, it would be a great thing to listen to before this conversation. So go back and listen to it, because I think we're going to be pulling a lot from that episode, and it'll just kind of make more sense if you listen back to it first. But yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, I haven't read the full book yet. I don't think Jess has either, but we've been going at our own pace with it. And Christina offered just incredible insights, but also kind of taking the book's concepts and then applying it to her life and kind of walking us through what it looks like to embody some of those concepts. So, yeah, it was just a really insightful conversation. And I think today it'll be like really fun for us to kind of share how those themes have kind of played out in our lives. I mean, that's what we were like, oh, we really want to share how we experience some of those concepts as well. Even though we're learning so much from that book, there's also times where we're like, oh, wow, that has happened to me, or oh, wow, I'm seeing this reflected right now. So that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. So, Jess, do you want to kind of start it off in terms of the topic and the like entry point? I know you had some really exciting reflections that you wanted to share.
Yes. Okay. I would love to. So I think that just as we were recording, and I'm sure her book talks about this, because you're right. Like I haven't gotten through the whole book. It's so good though, you guys. The Codes of Divine Love. Like it truly is. It's amazing. We're both loving it. But when she was talking about how sometimes we meet people who may not be, or like we may overlook them, or we may not think that like they're right for us initially, and it's and then we end up dating them. And usually it's because like when at the time that we meet them, they are a match for like our future self and like who we're evolving into. And I just sat there and I was like, holy fucking shit. Oh, sorry, I just said the F word. Whatever. Um, but I was like, holy shit. That literally happened to me with my current partner, because I've been in a relationship for like 2 years now. And we met through our main hobby, Brazilian Zouk dancing. And when we first met, it was very much just like a, oh, hi, like, you know, honestly, I kind of didn't even really remember our first interaction. And then we started like dancing together more. And then my body actually was like starting to just tell me things and like lead me to him. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like who is this person? And I found him so intriguing. And he wasn't like my typical type of like guy that I would usually go for. Um, and I was just so surprised. And like it wasn't an immediate, attraction, or like an immediate like, oh yeah, I'm going to date that person, which I think that a lot of people kind of expect when they're like single or like dating or open to dating. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like have an instant connection and have an instant attraction to people. And I think that just talking about this is really important, because releasing the expectation around that can really open you up to actually like finding someone who is for, again, like your higher self, your future self. And my current boyfriend, he's like the most mature man I've ever dated. He's also much older than me. He's like 9 years older than me. And I think that I'm just so grateful that I was like able to like open up to the experience, because if not, then, I wouldn't be dating him right now. And he's very much so become obviously like, well, I don't really consider having myself having a type, but at first I was like, oh, he's not my usual type. And I've heard Christina say that too, that like usually the person or a person that is for you like isn't someone who you think is like your type.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's funny because that's something I have not experienced in my dating life. Just like kind of like what you're saying around kind of like overlooking someone, like that specific experience hasn't happened to me, but I think it's like such an interesting and really cool thing. And I know, like, I remember us talking when we were like first getting to know each other and like getting to know our partners, and you were just like telling me, and I was like, wow, that is so interesting and like so different from my experience with relationships. And I feel like I've learned so much from you and your experience with that, and how much of, it can be like challenging. I know that you went through like kind of a challenging part where you were like, okay, like I'm really trying to open myself up to this, but like I'm experiencing resistance that comes with growth essentially. So is there anything that you want to share around that?
Oh my gosh, so much. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my resistance was fear of commitment, which Christina talks about. And it was like, I mean, this relationship in general, he has really called me up. And that was very triggering for me, because I felt like every guy that I had dated in the past, I was kind of always, and I don't mean this in like an egotistical way. It's more just like I was kind of always the one that was calling them up, if that makes sense. Like, um, but in this situation, like it was completely opposite. Like he was like, so grounded in who he was and still is, so grounded in who he is, very in his like healthy divine masculine. It was also the first time I had ever dated a guy that was emotionally available and in his healthy masculine. And that was very triggering to my nervous system, because like I didn't know how to handle it. And I just had been so used to like guys that would always play games with me, that would, never give me the time of day. And then like to be with a man who was like super upfront with me, like once, we started getting to know each other and we started like casually dating, he was very upfront and very like, yeah, I want to date you. And like, I want to be with you, like very forward, and just like told me what he wanted. And I had never experienced that before. And so it kind of like scared me. And I was like, wait, what? Like you're just claiming that you want to be with me? Like I'd never heard that before. It had always been like me being like, do you want to date? Like, you know what I mean? And like playing those games. And so I really had to like, you know, like calm myself down and be like, okay, wait, this is actually healthy. It was a lot of like rewiring my brain. And there's still a lot of that like even through the we've been together for 2 years now, I feel like I've grown so much in that sense. But there will be sometimes like that I like try to play a game with him and he's like, no, Jess, like stop. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's just like, just from so many years of dating and having it be unhealthy. And I think a lot of our dating culture is very toxic, and it's not, I don't blame it on like the guys that I dated, because like I was also that way. It like takes two to create a dynamic, you know what I mean? And so it's just been like calling me up, and that has been, I'm so grateful for it. And the thing that I really would want to say about that though is that you can have someone call you up. You can have someone like even just their energy and the way they interact with you, like call you up, which is usually going to trigger you. But it's up to you to like step up to it. And it's up to you to like do the work and commit to it. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to yourself, not even to the other person. And so, I mean, it definitely turns out as a commitment to the other person, but I think you know what I mean is like first and foremost, it's a commitment to your growth. And so I think just, if anyone is in a relationship, whether they feel triggered in certain ways, triggered in a way to be a better person or to like move through a wound, that's an invitation.
Hmm. Yeah, I love how you said that too around the the responsibility is to yourself and the partner, because, or the commitment is to yourself and your partner, because that has been coming up for me too, where it's like, yeah, it truly is. It's, and the way that the book frames it is like, we meet people and have relationships with them so that we can step into our more full whole selves, essentially.
Mhm.
So it's never really about that person, really. It is, but it's obviously like everyone's benefiting from it, but first and foremost, it's about wholeness within yourself. And that's, I mean, that's a huge, that's that's huge. That's huge. And something that the book like talks about too is that I really loved is this idea of, yeah, like wholeness within the self. But then one thing that I really like took a note of was the idea of like feeling love from another person, and
Mm.
like what does that actually mean. And I think that this happens in relationships all the time, and like, I'm sure, Jess, that you've like experienced this. I definitely have, where you meet a man, I'm a woman and I date men, so like I meet a man and he, I feel like love coming into me like from this person. And I had that one experience. I had that really, really, I felt that really intensely from one partner I was with. And it almost just felt like love was just like permeating me. And I actually like said it. I was like, I like communicated it because I was like, whoa, this is intense. And it, in the book, it like talks about that. And when I was reading that part, I was like, whoa, this actually has happened to me. And kind of on Jess's point of the wholeness piece, the book offers that when you're feeling love come from another like that permeation, it's actually, can you like flip your perspective to see it as this person is illuminating and mirroring the love within me. Like, I don't need that person as like my source of love. Like, that
Mhm.
love is just being amplified within myself when I'm in this dynamic. And like, what can that teach me? So I don't know. I just kind of felt like that related to what you were saying, but I think it's all interconnected in this theme of oneness within the self and sourcing from within, especially when you're triggered in an upward direction, as Jess was saying. And when you, it can be triggering too to like feel that level of love from someone, and you're like, whoa, there's these different types of triggers that are all pushing us into like ascension, upward, upward, upward.
That was such an interesting take and experience around that. And it is interesting because you can be triggered by like someone like feeling that love so much because it's going to trigger your worthiness, like how much you feel worthy of it and like receiving it. And like obviously everyone has their own triggers, but like that for me, that's what I've experienced. And then also like commitment, like when
Mhm.
I entered this relationship, I did not think that I had a commitment issue, but I definitely did. And that's been something that I've been continually like, it's a choice to continually choose to be with someone. But again, when you're with someone that is calling you up, it's like you're actually choosing yourself as you continue through the relationship. And I think, yeah, that like both of everything that Lily and I are saying is basically like it's all the self, right? And one thing that Lily and I have talked about is how much our relationships have like been reflections and mirrors for us. And I feel like that's definitely like what you were touching on, Lily, from a love perspective, but they're also going to reflect to you your wounds, and they're going to reflect to you your shadows. And that's something that I like. Another nuance here is that I don't know if this is in the book, but I actually heard this on a podcast yesterday they were talking about relationships, and it was like, there's so much out there that says we have to be fully healed and whole before being in a relationship. And the
Mm.
guy that was on, he's like a relationship therapist, and he was like, I think that's like the furthest thing from the truth. Like the healing happens in relationship. And I feel like that correlates to what we're talking about right now because I think so many people can block themselves from being in a partnership because they think they're not ready, or they think that like they have to have their shit together. Like at the beginning of my partnership, I was like, no, I have to have my career more in order. And that was also part of my resistance. But it's like, why? Like, why? Why do I need to like push this person away? There's like just like so much in our society around like independence and everything. But we can actually, like, for me, the most growth that I've ever had personally has been through being in a partnership.
Wow, that's really powerful. Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally fair to say, when it comes to being in a relationship. I mean, I know I've experienced that when it comes to like everything. Here's the thing. Everything's great. You feel so good when you're alone, right? It's like, wow, doesn't matter until you're with someone. Then it's like, okay, have you actually moved through that thing? That's
Exactly.
the test. And I mean, it's not like, I don't want to frame it as like a test. Like, it's not like a test. It's just everything's fine and dandy when you're in your own energy,
Yes.
And it's like, okay, great. You know how to be, well, okay. Not everyone does know how to be by themselves. So that could be a learning experience for some. And something that I've seen quite frequently is like a grasping onto relationship because there's like this fear of being alone, so that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about someone who has done like a lot of inner work and is like really solid within their being and gets into a relationship and things as they're not as solid as they thought, you know what I mean? And that's definitely happened to me. Like, I've definitely taken myself out of relationship experiences and felt like, okay, like I have a handle, like I feel really good about the things that I've moved through. And then I get back into a relationship and it's like right there in my face again. So it's like the relationship often brings up things, and healing them outside of a relationship is like maybe one level, and then healing them within the relationship is definitely another. If my experience serves, that's just me. That's just what I've seen with myself, where it's like, wow, how am I? And I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? So the other person is feeding into that dynamic too. So if you have a lot of open centers in your human design, like that can really start a runaway train, when that person could be feeding into like a wounding pattern that you have, and then all of a sudden it's amplified between the two of you. So I don't think that it's only the one individual's responsibility to heal the pattern, because as Jess was saying, it takes two to create a dynamic. But there is something to say that once you are in a relationship and you do have a pattern, sometimes it can be amplified by the other person who might share that, because
Mm-hmm.
you attract what you are. And so then it's like, oh shoot, like this pattern is huge now. And then it really takes intention on both people's parts to heal it. But the magnifying lens can be helpful because it doesn't really let anything slip through, in my experience. So yeah, relationships are definitely the next step when it comes to the inner work, for sure. And it's like, how solid really are you in that way? The relationship will tell.
Oh my God, that's so true. I've had the same experience in terms of like feeling like, I've done the work on myself and feeling super solid. And then, yeah, get into a relationship and I'm like, well, that's not healed. I
Yeah.
didn't I need to move through that and thought I was good there. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and Lily brought up a really good point about, the type of person we're talking about, because we're speaking on our experiences here, right? And so, I'm definitely the type of person that I'm very personal growth oriented, as is Lily, in and outside of a relationship. And so we're just talking about that aspect. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it really is just like allowing another person to, and like seeing them as a mirror and a reflection point and not the enemy, because that was like, for me at first, I'm like seeing him as the enemy, and because he's like triggering me and like it's bringing things up for me, and it's like he is not the end, or the other person is not the enemy, you know what I mean? Because it can cause you guys to like fight and stuff. And
Mhm.
just like really being able to look into the relationship and view it in that way, which is not easy, especially when like your nervous system is dysregulated. And I know that's a really like hot topic, but it's so true. When when you get into a fight with someone, or when you get pushed into fight or flight and you're really agitated, you like cannot think rationally. And so, sometimes you need to like really just calm yourself down. And that's why I think these things take time. And so, I'm just really grateful that I've had a partner who is like so incredibly patient, and he's been through a lot of what I've been going through in this relationship and past relationships. And so like he gets it. And so, just really grateful for that, because I mean, I've told Lily before, like this relationship has been like the biggest healing container for me. And, it's not always like it's not an easy thing though. Because you have to show up to it. So yeah, it's been a lot, but it's been really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And just seeing that for you, I feel like, as I said before, we have really different experiences there, because my current partner I met when I was really young. I met him when I was 20, and he is older than me. He's quite a few years older than me. We have like 6 years difference. And so when I met him when I was 20, he was 26. And kind of like the opposite of what Jess was saying, I think when we met, there was very much like I saw within him. I Maybe she's listening to this, but my roommate from college, I came home, I like had a date with him, and I came home, and I just sat on the couch, and I just like sat there like looking at the wall, and like she comes over and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like, "What? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, I mean, like, I met exactly what I want. And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, and I felt so like, it was so weird. Like, I felt like so calm. Like, there was like no emotion. I was just like, wow, this person like literally just like checks all the boxes. It was a really weird feeling. And then I was like, but he's never going to want to be with me. And like, that's where I was like in this state of like, I'm not good enough. And like, I thought because I was younger that he wouldn't want to be with me, and like those kinds of things. I just didn't think that I was that great, I guess, when I was 20. I don't know. Um, I guess that's what it was. So yeah, like seeing him that way was like an interesting experience for me, because it was like, oh, yeah, like I've found someone that really does fit exactly what I am realizing that I want. I never would have thought that I had like a type per se, but um there was that kind of like recognition that I had of like, oh, this person is like fitting a lot of the things, like he is fitting, and then, but the thing is like, first impressions are first impressions, and they're beautiful and wonderful, but like as we got into relationship, there was a lot of things that I realized about him, that I learned about him, that we worked through together, that like of course I couldn't have seen through first impression. Like there were things that, of course, like parts of his personality, parts of his background and wounding and all of that, so it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't like, it wasn't like a fairy tale perfect thing, like by any means. But I do think that, experiences can be different when it comes to dating. And I don't think there's any like right or wrong way, but that's just like my perspective and like my experience that I figured I would share. And I definitely, we've been together for like quite a long time now. So there's one of those things, it's just another kind of entry point into relationships. Like they can be different. So I just want to share that for listeners. If you meet someone and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I want, like it doesn't mean that it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like there might be situations where you meet someone and you overlook them, it's kind of like Jess's situation, and then you might meet someone and you're like, whoa. And I think it also depends on like where you are like as a soul, because it's like the more I guess like the more like healing that you do, and like the more that you get in touch with your soul. I was like reading this in the book. They were just saying like the more you're able to start to connect with the person that would be really good for you versus what maybe your ego would want. And I'm not saying that I did that at 20 years old. I'm definitely not saying that. But I do think that, as you like, because Jess, like your perspective is like totally different now, like after being with Johnny, for the past 2 years, like if you were ever to like have another partner, like I'm sure that this experience has changed the way that you see what you need, and same with me. Like the relationship that I've had has also changed the way that I see what I need.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It can be different. I think that's a good point. You can definitely, the interactions can all be different, or first interactions, first experiences with people. It's always comes down to, though, like the level of commitment. Like it always comes back to that is like, do you want to commit to the growth? Do you want to commit to like growing together? And it sounds like that's something that definitely you and Dan have had. I mean, obviously, you guys have been together for quite some time.
Yeah.
And even in my relationship, like, I've like my boyfriend's not perfect either. Like, any relationship that you're in, the wounds are gonna come up. Like, no matter how healed or how secure people are, um, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen and it's inevitable. And so it's really that like working through it together,
Mhm.
kind of like what Lily mentioned. And so I think that it's a choice, and it's really easy to just run away from it.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that is something that's just like really important to note, because we hear so much that like when you find the one, it's just easy and you just
Yeah.
know, and it's just effortless. And it's like, no, it's not fucking effortless. It's not. Like, you have to show up, you have to like commit to each other, and you have to grow. You have to be committed to growing together. And like, from everything, from my experience, I know from yours too, Lily, and from everything I've ever heard about relationships, like that's the one thing that I hear is like, you have to be committed to growing together, like
Yeah,
you can't,
definitely.
there's just no, and that's individually and together,
Mhm.
and that's something that, my partner is really into personal development. I know yours is too.
Mhm.
And I'm very into spirituality, and like that's my personal development, so we both have our outlets and our ways of growing ourselves. And then it helps us when we come together, and it just helps like having that growth mindset and approach to life, because I think that makes it like, no matter how different you are, that can lead to compatibility, which is like a whole nother topic. But I mean, the topic of like being different from your partner is a big thing that's come up for me in this relationship too. And just like, because we are so different, like we have a shared hobby, but we also have many different hobbies. We have many different interests. We have many different beliefs, actually completely different beliefs, but we share very similar values. And again, we have that like growth approach and mindset to life, which I think is what has been like the main thing that has been able to like move the needle forward, basically.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, just on that topic alone, like I actually have a story that I want to share on that because I feel like this ties in really well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
when I met my partner like at age 20 and he was 26, it was prior to my healing journey, and I like prior to getting sick, prior to all of that, if you like know me, follow me on Instagram, like you probably know that like I dealt with chronic illness for a long time. Um but it was prior to all of that, and I basically was just like a party girl, in college, like as we are in college.
Yes.
Um, you know, and I wasn't like a huge drinker, but I definitely drank and I definitely went to bars and stuff. Like, I was like pretty typical, I would say, in terms of like the party scene. I was also really responsible when I was young too. Like, I always had a job and like I was always making my own money, but I also was, partying. So when I met my partner, I was in that period of my life. And it's so funny because we just talked about this the other day. And he was like, you were like undercover at that point when I met you. And I was like, you're totally right. I was like undercover. Like my soul had not like fully emerged. Like I hadn't gone through my spiritual awakening yet. And I truly believe that we Dan and I, my partner, if we would have met after my spiritual awakening or even during it, his ego would not have let me in.
Ooh,
Like he
wow.
would not have chosen me at all. Like because he was very connected to that like party scene as well. And I do think that women tend to mature a little bit faster than men most of the time. Like I've definitely seen situations where that's not the case, but he was, 6 years older than me, but he was still very like in that phase of life where it was just like, party, friends, like that kind of thing. And he caught me. We connected when I was also in that phase of life. If you guys are watching, I just did like a strange hand movement. Um, and yeah, I just, we were walking outside and we were talking about this, and I was like, yeah, like your ego never would have let you be with me at that point if I hadn't still been that type of person, like living that type of life. But the thing was, when he did commit, when I committed, it was quite literally within a year that I got intensely sick, started going through my spiritual awakening, but he was already in it. And he was just like, I know that was really challenging for him because watching your partner like go from this like athletic, social party girl, who's just like having the best time to a girl who can only eat 5 foods, can barely walk down the street, and whose honestly mental space is just shit because she's like, what the fuck is happening to me? To me, like it's not really to me, but at that point I was like, what do I do with my life? And so I think for him, it was like really challenging to go through that with me. And then as I started to come out of it, I'm like emerging as a whole completely new person. But by that time in his development and his growth, he's able to see that for the benefit that it is, and also like how that's calling him into like his embodiment and his growth. But if I would have came at him, if we would have connected when I was in that part of my life where I was going through my spiritual journey and like becoming this new person essentially, I don't even think he would have seen me.
Mm. Wow, yeah, that's pretty powerful. And also just so amazing that because you did become a completely different person, or like you became who you really are, right? And for
Yeah.
him to like stay is very telling of like
Mm.
his commitment and his growth, and because that would be hard. That would be so triggering for anyone. Do you know what I mean? To be, but also it's like, well, you at first were going through, the sickness, but then it's like I feel like you stepped into this like version of self beyond that was just like, who you were. So it's like you're more vibrant, probably like you're more um who you really are, and people can feel that energy. So
Mm.
I'm sure he was like able to feel that from you, especially since you guys have been together for so long. But
Mm.
that's such a good point because Johnny and I have talked about this too. We've talked about how we wouldn't have liked each other. I was like, you would not have liked me when I was in my early 20s. For the exact opposite reason though, because like if he would have met me in my party girl phase, he would have been like, you are a child, goodbye.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean
However,
the timing is everything.
the timing is everything but he also told me, he was like, I don't think you would have liked me like when I was younger either, because
Mm.
he was like, I was a shithead, and he's like, I didn't emotionally mature until like 2 years ago. And like, so it's just interesting, like you really do meet people at the time that you're meant to meet them, but it's really interesting how um that's just a really interesting point that you brought up of like how you can drastically change, um
Yeah.
and how that can, yeah, that's a really interesting point. So I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that up.
I think most people would say that's not possible. Because like meeting in your early 20s, like your 20s, I mean, I'm still in my 20s, but your 20s are just like this like rapid transformation all the time, and like most people, I think it's like pretty difficult. I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of difficult to like stay with a single person through all of those years, especially if you're someone who's like pretty dynamic like I am. And, you know, it wasn't always like an empowered choice, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like, it wasn't always an
Dude,
empowered choice to stay.
yeah, like I honestly, the first time I heard that like you guys were together for the as long as you had been through your 20s, I was like, holy shit, because like my 20s were a fucking shit show. Like I would like the thought of like having been with one person the whole time, like just with how all over the place I was and how I just feel like your 20s, especially early 20s, it's like we're supposed to be adults, but we are not ready for that shit.
Yeah. We are just not adults. No.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, props to you and Dan for making it. And yeah, again, giving the commitment, like the commitment to each other, the commitment to yourselves, because like you've both grown as individuals too. And I think that that's like the really important thing to see is like how you can grow as a person within the relationship. And it's really, really special when you can like find someone that helps you grow into like a better person. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, other, you know, generations are different. Like my grandmother had her first child at 19 and was married at 18, you know? So like it's definitely, and my best friend, like she's also been with her partner for as long as I have, and you know, you know, it's different for everyone, but I think that yeah, the 20s can be really tough because people are just trying to figure themselves out and they're growing, and just a lot of transformation, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then, so there was one other thing that I really wanted to touch on. I don't really know if she touched on this in the book, but we kind of touched on this in the episode of like loving without expectation. And that has been a really big lesson for me, like recently, as of the past few months, just because, you know, I came into the relationship with a lot of jealousy, not from him, not from who I'm with currently, from my past, you know, being cheated on, um, and just also the dynamics of past partnerships. I had so much triggering around jealousy. And that was something, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of people can relate to, maybe not everybody, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And it's something that you don't want to talk about. Like you don't want to say like, yeah, I'm a jealous person because there's so much shame around it. Um, but I think the biggest thing that helped me was like being able to tell my partner like when I was being jealous, when I was getting jealous. And that is something that was really, really hard for me at first, but he just like received it so lovingly and was like, okay, like, thank you for telling me. And, you know, I think that though his response was really good for me because he didn't say sorry. Like, he didn't apologize, like, because he didn't do anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like I was just getting triggered, and he was like, how can I understand why you're getting triggered? And like, what did I do to like add to that? Do you know what I mean? Like, he was approaching it from this, like, how can I understand where this is coming from? And like, um, there's a level of like when it comes to jealousy of like what your partner is actually doing, and then also like acknowledging if you're just being triggered from the past. And so there's like a fine line there, and I think that that's something that I really had to learn. And it's been a process for me, like a process. But I have been so open with my partner about it, and that really, really helps because like literally now I am like not jealous at all. Like, and that is like a huge feat for me. Like huge, massive, massive, massive. I never thought I would get to this point, but I remember once I was telling him, like his phone, I'm just going to be really honest here because I feel like this is going to be relatable for a lot of women. His phone, this was like a while back. His phone was sitting, I don't know, on the counter by me, and he had like left it open like on his Instagram. And I like wanted to, every part of me wanted to like pick up the phone, go through that man's messages, see if he had been talking. Why? Why? Like, had he done anything? Literally nothing. He had done nothing to make me think, like, oh, he's up to no good. This was all coming from my past. Okay. because that was a thing in the past for me. And I had to have a lot. I had to like choose differently. And so I looked and it was not easy. Like I had to have so much self-control. I was like, I'm going to choose not to look. And so I didn't. And I literally like clicked on his phone so that it would like lock it. And I told him that the next day. I was like, you left your phone out on your Instagram and I was this close to looking through your messages. And he was like, babe. And I was like, but I didn't. And he was like, babe. And he like thought it was, he like gave me a hug and he was like, do you want to look through my messages? And I was like, no.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. I mean, I have been there too. I mean, yeah, it's so relatable. It's so relatable, but I love that story. It just like cracks me up so much. And but it also I understand like how tough that is too. Like it's funny, but it's also like giving your every ounce of self-control in the moment to like
Oh,
not
dude, it was not
do.
easy. Like,
Yeah. It's like
it was not.
it's like pattern breaking, but it's like
Yeah.
the voices in your head like keep trying to get you to be like, well, if you don't look, like you might be missing something, and like like
Yeah.
whatever it is, like it's like um all of that self-protective mechanism like coming all the way to the forefront, and it's like you're gripping on. So I thanks for sharing that. Super super helpful, I think, for people to know that that's not like there's nothing wrong with you. It's like your protective mechanisms coming to the forefront when that's happening. Because if you have had situations like Jess in the past where like you have been cheated on, like there is something that's so detrimental to the heart, and it's like your body, your nervous system will do anything that it can to protect you from that pain. Like emotional pain is usually even more um ingrained in the nervous system to protect than physical pain. Like we'll actually usually opt for the physical pain versus the emotional pain. So it's like that protective part of us is like so strong to try
Yeah.
to make sure that we're safe emotionally. And this comes from when we're little babies too, like all the way back.
Yeah, and it's like at what point is the self-protection becoming self-sabotage? And so that's something that you really have to like discern, and this takes a lot of self-awareness. And I'm not saying like if your partner is showing signs of like if they're being sketch, then yeah, if you need to
Yeah.
like do something to like check it out, like I'm not saying just like overlook that, but I'm saying like in my situation, like my partner did literally nothing to be showing any sort of sketch behavior. Like even in his response of being like, do you want to look at my Instagram messages, was very like that response in itself. And this is why I'm saying like the more you can be like honest with them and open with them, like the more healing it can be. Because him saying that to me like showed me too, like he's like, I have nothing to hide, like so if you
Mhm.
want to look, like I don't care. And it made me like, and I wasn't expecting that, but I remember in that moment, it was like just a little bit, it led me a little bit closer to like
Mhm.
feeling that like security, like healing that wound.
Mhm.
And it was because I was vulnerable with him. And like being vulnerable isn't just like sharing your emotions, it's like sharing the shit that you like want nobody to know, right? Like it's not easy. And but you'd be surprised like when you can talk about these things with your partner, because it really like when it's met with like no judgment, it really just like opens up like so much for you. And so I just really wanted to share that because I know I'm not the only girl that deals with that stuff. And a lot of it comes from, and this isn't to like blame men or anything, it just comes from like typical relational dynamics with like usually a woman is more of like the anxious attached and the man is like more emotionally unavailable, or at least that's how it's been in my past. And so that type of dynamic feeds into this, and it feeds into this like controlling energy as a woman of like wanting to control what your partner is doing. And that's definitely something that like I used to be like, well, I don't want him to do this because like what if he like meets somebody else or whatever. I was just being like, controlling and jealous without trying to be.
Yeah.
um and now I'm just like that, I feel that security like within myself too, and like I just know that I can like trust him so fully. I want him to be like all of who he is, no matter what that means, and like with or without me. And that's also something that I've never experienced in a partnership, is like really wanting someone to be all of who they are for the sake of their own happiness, not for the sake of mine. And
Mm.
so that has been something that I've like genuinely really stepped into in like the past month. And it feels like really, really good, because to me that's like divine love, which is like Christina's book, you know? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Oh, wow. Wow. I love that. I mean, how can you not love that? That's freaking amazing. That's like the goal, right? Is we don't want our like wounds and patterns to get in the way of someone else's joy, and we like truly want the best
Yeah.
for them, like from our heart. Like we want, I mean, not that you don't want the best, not that's the wrong way to say it. We want them to be all of themselves from the heart, because we're okay with the behavior that they exhibit when they are all of themselves doesn't threaten us. And
Mhm.
that's
It
something that
makes them
I've so go ahead.
sorry.
No,
Well,
go.
it makes them happier, and it makes them more enjoyable to be around. Like I was literally just telling Johnny this yesterday. I was like, I want you to lean into this more, like around one of our hobbies. I was like, I want you to lean into this more, because like you are so much happier when you do. And he
Mm.
was like, wow, like thank you. And I was like, yeah, like I just do it for you. You know what I mean? And like I've never been like that in a partnership. Like
Yeah, no, I mean but that's the thing though. Like I don't think that many people, hopefully most people get there, but it's not and maybe they have it right away, but I think it's definitely a, a maturation process where at one point you can be like, okay, I feel comfortable enough in my own self. I feel safe enough in this relationship to totally let go of control. When like so many
mhm.
of us have gripped onto control for our own safety for many years or within many dynamics, family, friends, partnerships, um, where we have to like try to maintain a certain dynamic or avoid certain things or even like exhibit like manipulative behavior in a subconscious way to make sure that we don't end up in a situation that feels compromising or unsafe, all of these things. There's so many interrelated connections that we have within our nervous system when it comes to relating like that. But it's like when you like Jess, when you've hit that point where it's like, wow, I just feel safe within myself, I feel safe in this relationship, and I can totally just let him shine to his maximum. Like that's
Mhm.
truly such a gift that you give.
Yeah. And it's been such a journey, you guys. Like I can sit here and talk about it now, but just like what Lily said, like it's been a lot of like crying, it's been a lot of, you know, arguing, like getting into confrontations, like a lot of inner turmoil, a lot of therapy. Like, it's not like something that, I mean, maybe it comes easy for some people, but for me, it
Yeah.
didn't, just based on, my past and my history. And that's where I'm saying, I don't know, I'm just like, for whoever needs to hear this, because I hear so many women just talk about men in such a horrible way. And like, I used to be one of them. And it's like, they're not all bad. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not even bad. Like, they're just wounded. And like, aren't we all wounded? You know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
think just like just know, if you're not already in a relationship or in one that you feel, you know, is healthy, um, the person is out there, and it's like, don't expect to go into any relationship just both being fully healed. It's about like being able to show up for one another and being able to show up for yourself.
Mm, yeah. So well said. So well said. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that we want to touch on today, do you think?
I feel like that this is the first time I've really like talked in depth about my relationship, like publicly, openly. And it felt really good, because I just feel like I've been talking to like Lily as one person, but like all of my girlfriends, and just being like, every woman deserves to experience this type of like partnership. And I'm just
Mm.
so grateful that I'm in it, and that, again, it's taken like commitment from my end too. But no, I just thanks for opening up the space for me to share on this, because it was like really healing to even talk about, and really fun too. So
Yay. Yeah, and same, kind of same. I haven't shared like some of those stories, like little anecdotes that I shared too.
yeah,
So that's edgy for me.
a little
But
bit for both of us. It was a little like more personal than we usually go, but I don't
yeah.
know. That's something that we've been talking about, is like we want you guys to see us in, a really real and authentic way. And like, it just felt really perfect to bring up relationships after having had Christina on.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where it's like talking about relationships conceptually is like kind of boring when you're listening to it and you're like, okay, just like give me the example, or like,
Literally.
like what are you actually talking about here? Like when some people talk about relationships from like this like high up view, like that's helpful sometimes, but it's like that's not really what we tend to do on this podcast. So we usually tend to give you the experience. And yeah, I hope you guys got what you needed. I'm sure you got exactly what you needed out of this episode. Share it with a friend if you feel called to. We would love that. And I think we're going to wrap up here. We'll see you guys in the next episode.